Hi, this is Kevin Conroy, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You've just jumped inside the pull bag. Join TFG1 Mike and the rest of the comic reading crew here at the GCRN as they make their great escape into comics. From DC, Marvel, IDW, Boom Studios, Zenoscope, and more, we have everything you want to read right here. Transformers comics? Yeah, we cover that. He-Man? Yeah, sure. DC superheroes like Batman, Batgirl, Nightwing, and Batman Beyond? Yep, we have those too. How about TMNT from IDW and I Hate Fairyland from Image Comics? Yeah, we have all that here. Plus, so much more. It's all inside the pull bag here on the Geekcast Radio Network. So without any further ado, it's time to talk about the comics we are reading right now here inside the pull bag.
Oh yes, but think of the fun.
Hello and welcome to The Pull Bag. I'm, of course, TFG1 Mike, and this is a very special in-between episode. We have finished with the Mighty Morphin March, the Power Rangers Boom Studios coverage from Kyle Higgins and all of that. This is episode 345.5. It's been a while since I've done a .5, I think, and at what seems like a few months ago now, it's probably only a few weeks, one of my friends, someone I interviewed before several different times. I've read a lot of his stuff. Mr. Pat Shand, he wrote some stuff about the comics industry on Facebook, and I felt that it needed a bigger discussion, and I also actually wrote up a blog post about it. So, welcome, Pat.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on anymore. It's like, people always ask, how's it going? I'm like, sometimes I wish it would stop.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So, for those of you who didn't read day 65 of my daily blog, basically we're calling this episode The Way of the Comic Book. And you had written this post out, and I had actually taken part of your quote from your post, and then someone had asked you in the comments to expand on it, so I took that and put that in my write-up.
Yes.
So what was the initial post that you had sent, that you had published online for Facebook?
All right. So I'm actually going to just read it from your post.
Okay,
I
that
wrote,
works.
People want longer stories. People who didn't grow up reading comics do not relate to the idea of sitting down and reading a story for 10 to 15 minutes and then waiting a full month to continue. Even people who did grow up with that are buying fewer single issues and are for sure letting them build up in stacks for months. The conversation needs to shift away from the variance being a problem and toward the larger existential problems within this industry and art form.
Yeah, I've been doing this podcast for 6 years at this point. I wasn't someone that grew up reading comics. I read a comic here and there, but I was not getting my mom was not getting me comics from Walden Books or newsstands every single week.
Right. Yo, Walden Books.
Always got to throw that in there.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's how old I am now.
Man, remember when it was Borders and Walden versus Barnes & Noble and B. Dalton?
Yep.
Good times, man.
Yep. Oh, God. So, yeah, I mean, and when I started the podcast, I started getting print issues, and I would get the issue every month or whatever. Usually I'd end up at the comic shop every Wednesday getting 2 or 3 issues of various, like, it wasn't just one title. I wasn't going to the comic shop just to get Robin Hood #1 or Destiny NY #1 or Clonsters #1. I was getting, just a multitude of I wasn't just there for one issue. I was there for multiple things that I was interested in, like, Scott Snyder's run on Batman at the time, or Kyle Higgins' run on Nightwing, or the Batman Beyond comics, or whatever it is, IDW's Transformers, Turtles, whatever. It doesn't really matter what it was. I would usually end up leaving the comic shop with anywhere 5 to 10 single issues for that,
Yeah.
for each week. And at some point, I discovered digital and Comixology, and I said, to hell with the print, I need the digital.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know as a comic writer, you probably don't want to hear that, because...
No, because here's the thing. I sell digital comics too, The product is the story, and the delivery method is either print or digital. And I do believe that in both books and comics, the core audience is the physical product audience. However, the digital audience is growing too. And I think that there's this idea that they compete when I don't think that's true. I think that both are essential components of a writer's survival is to talk to both of those audience.
Right. And part of your comments about the 20-page story, you're right. I mean, at this point, I wait for trades. I do not read single issues anymore, hardly at all.
Oh, for sure. And plus, I mean, dude, like, the culture that we live in, we'll sit down and we'll watch TV in a row for 5-6 hours.
Yep.
We binge, that's what we do. So the idea of sitting down for 20 minutes and then coming back to that story in a month, it's so alien to people who are reading comics now. Like, my wife, when I first met her, she wasn't really aware of comics that much. So she started to pick out little things that she thought she would enjoy at the shop while I was shopping. And she wound up loving comics, but she was so frustrated by the idea of just one issue per month. And it didn't make sense to her. Whereas reading a trade and reading for about an hour, 2 hours, and then waiting 5 months makes more sense to her. And that makes more sense to just pretty much anybody because they get more story, they get to live with the characters longer. Because the truth is, when you've lived with the characters for a longer reading time, you retain them and their story more. With comics, if I read a number 1 in January, by the time number 2 drops in February, I don't know who those people are anymore, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't either. I mean, and how I've been doing the podcast is sometimes I will, like, if the trade isn't available yet, like, perfect example is, again, going to one of the big two, DC, with their Batman Beyond Rebirth by Dan Jurgens. The latest story arc was at least the latest story arc from when I was reading it is Target Batman. Obviously, they've moved on. They've already published all that at this point. Issues 20 to 24. So I wanted to read it. I wanted to eventually cover it on the podcast. It will eventually get covered on the podcast. However, just because I wanted to read it at the time, I bought them singly. But the trade just came out recently, and I'm like, that means I have to wait another 9 months for the final joke trade, which is the next story. Damn it.
No, for sure. I mean, what you're saying is true too, and it's what I've seen is pretty unique, that people will buy the single issues and they'll buy the first one and read it sort of as a pilot to see if they want to eventually buy the trade. But because I've noticed that I'll read number 1 issues, but when I buy a number 2 and number 3 because I love it, those all end up building up and up and up, and all of a sudden the trade comes out and I buy it, but then I remember, wait a second, I have those all in single issues, just didn't read them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew once I found out about Comixology, and I'm like, I have to go digital because if I don't, I'm gonna end up killing myself. The Punisher nearly killed me, quite literally.
Yeah.
Well, we did this thing, Punisher Month, back in 2013, the first year of the show, and it was all trades like Year One and Welcome Back Frank and all that stuff. Well, I'm sitting here holding a physical copy of Welcome Back Frank, which is like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 inches thick. Holding it, trying to read the story. Absolutely loving the story. It's nothing against the comic itself. It's the physical media of a trade paperback and trying to hold it one-handed because of my cerebral palsy. And it's like, I'm reading this story, but my eyes are getting really, really droopy right now. And at one point, I actually dropped the book and fell asleep. It wasn't because of what I was reading. It's because of the exertion of holding that physical trade paperback up. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going digital. It saves space. It saves this. I don't need a million short and long boxes in my office to collect the comics.
Yeah, I mean, that does make sense to me. I'm a proponent for, I see every part of the industry as valid. I understand why there are single issues. My my thing isn't that there shouldn't be. My thing is that shouldn't be the primary method, because I always see all these retailers trying to assess what's wrong with the industry, and they have great insight because they're the ones selling the books. But to me, it's so weird that retailers always bring it back to the variant covers being a problem. It's like they treat the readership as if they are addicted physically to variants. Here's the thing. They buy what they want. Yeah. If they want a variant, they're going to buy a variant. That isn't the publisher. That's the publisher as a company meeting a demand with the readership. If that wasn't an existing demand, the publishers wouldn't do it, right? So I don't see why that keeps being the focus when retailers speak about the problems in the industry. The problem in the industry is that we aren't appealing to people who don't already love comics, because people who don't already love comics, people who didn't grow up reading comics, don't understand comics.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about comics and the comics industry in my mind is that it's always been, obviously, a reading / super stylized visual medium. It's like combining a cartoon with a script of a cartoon. It's basically you're taking a book and you're taking a cartoon and you're making a comic out of it. And it's, it's 2D, it's not 3D, it's not this, it's not that, it's not, whatever. And you have all these amazing artists, no matter what company they're with. I don't care what publisher, who works where, whatever. I don't care, whatever. Every single artist I've ever read and I've ever talked about on this podcast, I may have critiqued their work at some point if there was something that looked off to me, but in general, I always love the art that I see in comics.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're creatively in a pretty decent place. I think that we were in a bit of a renaissance a few years ago, but I think that we're in a pretty decent place as far as art goes, as far as writing goes. To me, it's more the method of delivery of the story that's a problem. And I think that I also think that our reliance on genre is a problem, and I am culpable as well. I keep having ideas for comics that have a sci-fi, horror, or fantasy twist, but the thing is that when people watch TV, they aren't only watching genre TV. I want comics to expand into the genres that people watch all the time. I want more comedy comics. I want more crime comics, more romance comics. And I'm trying to do that on my end too. It's just that people still gravitate toward wanting to support what they already know. It's very much a medium where people only reach out to see what they already understand in comics, like having someone try to launch a 20-issue romance comic is a guarantee that they'll lose money because that audience doesn't exist yet. So I'm trying to think of ways that we can build that audience and make these audiences out of the people who don't already understand what we're doing here,
Yeah, absolutely. And I just had a really horrible idea.
Oh boy. What is it?
You'd have to get permission, obviously, from the company originally that did this, but basically, can you imagine a world where we would have adapted every single Harlequin romance into comic form?
Oh, hey, I mean, you know what? That sounds funny. That would be so successful. It would be so successful. And that would expand what comics are overnight. The sad thing is that it probably wouldn't happen because comics people don't understand the power of other media. I've noticed that most comics people are very comic book minded, and that they grew up reading comics, and that they will read comics till the day that they die, and that's fine. However, I didn't grow up reading comics, so I'm coming from a place where I was one of those people who didn't understand what we were doing here. And then when my world was expanded and I began to read comics, I was blown away by this sort of secret hidden art form, right? And I think that if we can show it to other people, and I'm talking about any person, right? I always think back to this essay that I believe Robert Kirkman put in the back of Thief of Thieves #1, where he writes that and this isn't a direct quote, but he says that film is for everybody. If you ask someone what their favorite song is, everyone has an answer. Everyone watches TV. Everyone reads books for the most part. But everyone doesn't read comics. Why? It's because they don't understand what it is. When I go on a plane to a convention, when I'm talking to a taxi driver on the way to a con, and they ask what I do, and the person sitting next to me on the plane asks what I do, and I say I write comics, people don't understand what the fuck I'm talking about, you know? They don't know what that is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and I know I can reference this because I know you've done it. You know what you tell them next time? I wrote for Marvel. I wrote Iron Man. Oh, the movie? No, the comic.
Well, I mean, I have had that conversation before, and that's exactly how it goes. You know, I went on Charlemagne the God's podcast, Brilliant Idiots, and as I came in, Charlemagne listed what I did, and his co-host Andrew Schultz says, "Oh, the movies," and I had to go, "Oh, no, the novels," you know, and the thing is that's a symptom of the industry's sort of mystery, right? That people don't really immediately think of the comics, and that even when they do, they think of just Marvel and DC, when really I think that the bangers are happening in Image, Boom, my company, Space Between, Black Mask, Vertigo, you know? But unfortunately, people think either of superheroes that were published in the 50s. Like they don't even think of modern day superheroes. They don't think of Scott Snyder. Scott is like our superstar, right?
Yeah.
But what's crazy is, think about this. The average person doesn't know who Alan Moore is, right?
Yeah, no.
That's crazy. That's crazy. He's our superstar. The amount of people who don't read comics who know who Grant Morrison is, maybe 1 in a million, dude. You know, like we think that these people are superstars, but they are to us. However, all right, so in music, if you don't listen to a genre, you still know who the superstars are. Like, I don't listen to heavy metal. I'm aware that the bands exist. I don't listen to I mean, for example, someone who only listens to heavy metal, they know Ariana Grande exists, right? Mm-hmm. We don't sort of go beyond comics. We have our own little world here, and I think that the survival of our world needs to be opened up to the masses so people can understand what we're doing here, because there's no reason that someone who reads books, watches movies, listens to music wouldn't love comics. There's no reason.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, a visual medium that tells a story that you can read within 10 or 15 minutes. A visual medium that tells a story that you can, in trade, can read in an hour or so, you know.
Yeah.
What I find interesting about trades versus singles is when the whole story is collected, depending on how dense the writing is, depending on how in-depth the writing is, takes me longer. Like, the Power Rangers stuff from Boom Studios and Kyle Higgins' first run on that, the first 30 issues or so. I don't know if it's because I love the franchise, I grew up with the franchise, obviously, or it's the way Kyle writes it, or it's the way the art is presented on the page. But I read all 5 volumes within maybe... Each one took me maybe 45 minutes or less. Whereas something like Transformers More Than Meets the Eye / Lost Light, written by James Roberts, takes me 1 to 2 hours, or I may have to stop and come back to it. Because James, the way that he writes... He's writing this long, intense, dense story, and I'm not saying that Kyle doesn't do that, but
right.
Kyle's reads faster? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, that makes 100% sense. Like, my goal as a writer is to control that. Like, if you read Afterglow or Clonsters, those move fast. If you read Destiny in New York, that is a much more dense read that you'll... I mean, I hope that you would spend about an hour or an hour and a half to 2 hours with Destiny New York Volume 1, whereas with Afterglow, I think that you could finish it up in a good 45 minutes, you know? I mean, or less, or even perhaps more for Destiny New York, you know? I made that dense on purpose so that people could live with it for a longer period of time. And it's more of a character piece. So you stay with the characters and you wonder about them and you go on journeys with them. Whereas Afterglow, you're kind of taking it along for a quick journey, you know? And I think that is one of the positives of the comics medium and just comics as an art form, in that the writer and the artist very much, and to an extent to the letterer, control the pacing of your read, and you as a reader do too. You know, it's one of those things where it's the perfect mix. I mean, you said a script and cartoons. I always think of it sort of like as film and a book mixed together, right? Because with a book, you are 100% in control of your pace. A film, you are 0% in control of the pace. It just goes. With comics, you can control your pace by reading slower, letting your eye linger on the art. However, it is the writer and artist's job too to guide you along and control the pace in a somewhat. So it's sort of this perfect balance between a lack of control and 100% control on the reader's point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone that says the comics industry is dying, I'm sorry. There's no way. It's ever changing.
Yes.
Lots of things have changed in the last, well, for example, 80 years of Batman. A lot of crap has changed, but a lot of things remain the same, regardless of what dumbass Zack Snyder's opinion is. I'm sorry. Batman doesn't kill. Oh, God. Anyway, but a lot of things have changed, but it has never gone away. Since the comics have been here all this time, it's never really gone away. Whereas, TV shows end. TV shows get canceled. TV shows only make it to one episode or whatever. They only make it to the pilot or whatever. Whereas comics, there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands. It doesn't matter if it's the big two. It doesn't matter if it's any other publisher. Whatever you're interested in, whatever characters, whatever, if you want to try something new, like you were saying earlier, do that. Just read. And anyone, Bill Maher, that says anything about comics not being true literature can go die in a fire, because I'm sorry, they are a form of literature. They're not, a 2,000-page book, but they're still reading. As long as you read, it doesn't matter what you read.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Maher is for sure trolling. That's what he makes his career off of. He's just a troll who says the thing that'll get the most people up in arms, So I take what he says with a grain of salt, because I don't believe that he believes that. I don't think he believes anything. I think that he is just this guy who channels the hot take, puts it out there only to get people talking. I don't respect that shit at all. Yeah, man, comics is just another art form. It's I think that people have this thing where they think it's only old stories or only superhero stories, and that's just not true. And hopefully as indie companies rise, and hopefully, in my opinion, as the graphic novel rises again, because the truth is that there was a conversation in the 90s, and it was a pretentious conversation, right? People were saying, oh, it's not comics, it's graphic novels. But the truth is, no, it was comics too. There's no difference between comics and graphic novels except the length. So I think that the idea that I have is that I think that longer comics should be the answer. It's not, the answer isn't getting rid of variants. The answer isn't changing how superhero companies operate. The answer is comic stories that appeal to a broader audience, that are longer, that people can pick up as a book and understand what it is. People will always pick up copies of Strangers in Paradise as an omnibus. They will not pick up copies of Strangers in Paradise as a single issue series. That people will always, if given the option, who don't read comics, they'll always go for the longer story, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I want the whole story. I don't want, it was great at first. Hey, whatever. Insert whatever number one here. Hey, great. Yay. Okay, come back in a month. You mean I have to wait a whole month? Okay. Next month, I'm like, oh, hey, let me go back like you were saying earlier, you don't remember what happened between number 1 and number 2.
Right.
I used to have to go back and reread number 1s.
Oh, me too.
Like,
me too.
And it wasn't just number 1s. It was whatever issue number it was that was out. Like, whatever it is. It could be, Clonsters number 50 or something. I'd still have to go back and read number 49 to figure out what's going to happen in 50.
Yeah.
There are specific sometimes issues that I think that you can read them and not have to read the previous 999 issues. Like, as we're recording this, Detective Comics number 1000 is out. And I read the description of that on Comixology. I'm not paying $10 right now for that issue on digital. I'm sorry, I'm not. Not right now. But I read the description, and it's basically, a multitude of artists and writers telling, their version of Batman, celebrating 80 years of that character. That's cool. I love it, like a single issue like that isn't a specific number 1, but it tells multiple stories. I also love how story arcs play out, but I need the whole story. So trades, graphic novels, whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
Those are infinitely better for me than reading the single issues, unless I have no other choice. If I have no other choice and I have to read the singles, I will.
Yeah, I mean, same. And I think that people hear what I'm saying, and they think that my idea is to abolish the single issue. Because the thing is that in 2019, if you have an idea, people will look at it and rob the nuance from it, right? They just take out the hot take and just divorce the context. What I'm saying is this: single issues should be a prestige project. They should still exist. The primary motive story should be a longer comic. That's true. I believe that. However, the single issue shouldn't go away. It should be our vinyl. It should still exist for the people who want it. It's a specialized audience for the hobbyists. However, if we appeal only to hobbyists, we can never expand, and eventually we will peter out. It's not happening now, but if we only appeal to people who already read the product, then what happens when those people are all dead, dude, Yeah.
I think what it is if, and you can speak more to this than I can, but I think that what needs to happen is writers need to write for the eventual collection. I don't know if all writers do that, but you take a number 1 and you leave it on some sort of cliffhanger or whatever so it flows evenly into number 2 without having to have last time on Clonsters kind of thing.
I mean, what I would say about that is that I do that to an extent. When I put out the books that I fund on Kickstarter, I will make a chapter 18 pages, 25 pages, 40 pages. To me, being free from the model of, I have to do 20 pages a month is so freeing. It's so much better for the story. So that when I put out the single issue version, like I'll write Destiny New York Volume 1, put it out physically, and then I'll release the single issues as the digital chapters on Comixology. And those will range from, like I said, a shorter page count, like 15, 18 pages, all the way to 40 pages, right? So that is written just the way it was meant to be written, as essentially how I would write a novel. Novelists don't have to hit a page count per chapter. So I was doing that with my book, right? And I think that yields a much more natural read, and hopefully it translates to single issues too, because I mean I don't aim for cliffhangers in any of my stuff, but I do aim to end in a way that will make the reader want more. I just try to do it in a way that I don't see as a cheap hook. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't mean as a complete cheap hook kind of cliffhanger. I mean a cliffhanger that, again, I know this isn't yours and whatever, but we just finished our Boom Studios Power Rangers coverage, and the way Kyle wrote each of those issues, I felt as if, even though I didn't read them singly, I'm reading them as the collection.
Right.
I felt as if, if I had been reading it singly, I would have been satisfied / unsatisfied as far
definitely.
as, hey, this is this is great. You leave this way, and you leave us wanting more. That's what you're supposed to do in single issues. You leave them wanting more. But at the same time, I want all the story right now. I need to have it all right now. So,
I agree.
The way of the comic book, folks, it's consistently changing. Who knows where it's going to go in the future. You've got a lot of stuff going on.
I do. Yeah, should I plug some stuff right now?
Sure, plug away.
All right. Yeah, let's go. On Kickstarter right now, I have the graphic novel collection of my series Little Girl. It's a horror story of a haunting told from the ghost point of view. That is on Kickstarter. We are so close to being funded. Our goal is 8,000. We're approaching 7,000. I'm not sure if you put links in the bottom, but if you don't, check me out. Just search my name. Go on Kickstarter. We are there. I usually have a Kickstarter going every 3 months or so, and this is my 11th campaign. 10 put out there, 10 funded. Let's make it a round. Well, not round, but let's make it an even 11. You know.
That would be an odd 11 because 11's not an even number, Pat.
See, that's why. That's why I want to shout out to every math teacher. I listen to you guys. But I just
yeah, exactly. I am so far from being a math teacher.
Oh man,
I'm very remedial when it comes to math. You start putting letters and things in with the numbers, I'm like, get that algebra away from me.
Yeah, man. I mean, here's the thing. You know, they teach you all this shit. I wish they taught finances because I don't use what I learned in math since I use what I learned in 4th grade math, but I mean, I wish they would have given you the option that if you're going to be a mathematician, take this dumb stuff. If you're going to be a person, take a tax class. You know, I've learned so much more from my accountant than I have from high school math, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. Also, check out Pat's books, Destiny New York, Clonsters, Gangsta Asperista. When is that coming? I know the physicals are already here, but the whatever else.
No, the physical is printing this week, actually. It's going to be shipping to backers with Spooky Girls in early May. And then that'll be on Amazon in early June. And right now on Amazon, my company, Space Between Entertainment, has Destiny New York Volume 1 and Volume 2. We have Prison Witch Volume 1, Clonsters Book 1, and Afterglow is dropping on Amazon very soon.
Very cool, very cool. Where can the people interact with you online, sir?
Find me online at Pat Shan pretty much anywhere. I have a Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then I'm on YouTube with my company, Space Between. I do reaction videos with my wife. We have a podcast every week, and we have a vlog most weeks as well.
Very cool, very cool. We hope you guys enjoyed this special discussion with Pat Shand here on the Pullbag.
Year.
What'd you say?
I just said year.
And coming up next, hopefully it might change, but hopefully coming up next month, it's Autobotly April, folks, where we're going back to the original IDW Transformers spotlights. So one character per issue kind of thing. We're doing this in an 8-part series over this April and this August. So that's what's coming up inside the Pullbag. You can find us online at the Pullbag on Twitter. I am at TFG and Mike. Follow at Geekcast Radio. Make your great escape into comics, and we will catch you next time.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pullbag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback at geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepullbag and at geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.
The A-Team.
I love it when a plan comes together.
love when a plan comes together.